Hi, I'm Fleur. Welcome to this 20-minute beginner Pilates video. If you'd like to follow along, you just need a mat. So when you're ready, let's get started by simply warming up the spine. We're going to do some gentle lateral bends here, gently moving from side to side to warm up the spine. If it feels a little heavy, having your hands up by your temples, you are welcome to just bring them down by your sides, which will just take a little bit of the weight off. Just going to do some gentle sideways movements here, warming up the spine before we get into our exercises. Let's place our hands on our knees and just bend and straighten our legs just to warm up through the hamstrings. You can do a little flexion of the spine here by bringing your hands all the way down to the mat if you would like, otherwise you can keep your hands on your knees. We're lengthening through the hamstrings here, creating a little bit of movement, a little bit of flexion of the spine and warming up the hamstrings. Now let's bring our legs a little wider, our knees wider, placing our elbows on our knees and twisting to rotate the spine. We're looking up over your shoulder, moving gently from side to side and just resetting for a second in the middle. Try and imagine that you're stacking your shoulders one on top of the other as we work in this rotational movement to warm up the spine. From side to side. Now we're gently going to roll up, rebuilding the spine one notch at a time, rolling our shoulders at the top and bringing our head up last. Now we're going to begin our exercises by doing some very simple and gentle tilts. So keeping our arms by our sides, pulling in through the core, about 50% engagement here, and we're gently tipping through the will go back and you're coming over about 45 degrees, so this isn't a full roll down. Remember that lengthening through the spine, bringing the crown of your head towards the sky so the crown of your head goes in the same direction, so you're keeping your back nice and long and straight. You're just gently tipping over. It's not a full bend, it's just a slight tilt. So your hips will go back. The knees are soft, but your legs are straight in this position. This is an exercise for the lower and mid part of the back, so you really need to make sure that you're tucking in and supporting your spine by pulling in through your abdominal muscles. And then we'll bring in the arms, so raising the arms up as we tip over, about 45 degrees, breathing out as we go down and in as we come up. So you exhale as you tip over and inhale as you draw back. So just do this one more time. And now we're going to start to turn this into a squat. So bending the knees and sitting back. You should be able to lift your toes because all of the weight is in the back. So it's all back down into your heels. Sitting back as if you're sitting into a chair. Exhaling as we go down and inhaling as we come up. Keeping your spine supported by drawing in through your core. So that's your abdominal muscles and also your pelvic floor. Squeezing the glutes as we come back. Let's hold and pulse this a few times. And come back up. And then we'll do that again. Hold and pulse. And then drawing back up. One more time, hold and pulse, and then drawing back up. Now we'll just do a couple more squats. Exhaling as we go down, inhaling as we draw up, really squeezing through your glutes, keeping your arms nice and strong, bring your arms up by your ears, and then we'll come to the back of our mat and we're going to roll down for our mat activities. So you're rolling over your beach ball or imagining that you're rolling over a tennis net. So nice, straight back, and then bringing our hands down and walking out down to the mat. And between making this video, I had done some classes out here, so you'll see more maths now. But it's a gorgeous day to have been teaching outside, so if you are ever near the Stonehouse Court Hotel, please do come to one of my classes. It's lovely to be able to teach outside in the sunshine. Okay, so coming onto our hands and knees. So our knees are under our hips and our hands are underneath our shoulders. Let's warm up in this position by doing a few cat and cow movements. So looking up towards the sky and then rounding the back and looking down to the mat. Arching and looking up to the sky, rounding and looking down to the mat. Just moving gently in between these two movements, working with your breath until we find your neutral spine position, which is in between these movements once we've worked and warmed up the spine here. So now we're going to come to our hover. So tucking the toes, exhaling and gently lifting the knees off the mat just a couple of inches, and then we're going to be stepping out side to side. So we're stepping, keeping the spine nice and strong. So we're just walking our feet out side to side, keeping everything else nice and strong, and then releasing that into down dog, and then coming back into our hovers. So walking out side to side, little steps. This is quite challenging, so stay strong. Keep going, just a couple more. Just a couple more, and then we're going to drop the knees and come back into child's pose just to release that off. Well done. Now from here, let's push up into down dog, really seeing if you can lengthen through the back of the legs, padding your feet out a little, see if you can create a little bit more length in the back of the legs. And then we're going to come down to our push-up. So from here, dropping the forehead down to the mat, pushing up, and then tucking the toes and pushing back into down dog. And then again, coming back down, dropping the knees, doing a push-up, and then pushing back up into down dog. Just keep working with this movement. So we're exhaling as we go down. Quick inhale, exhaling on the push-up, pushing it up into down dog. Just working with your breath. So if you try and make sure that every time you breathe out, that's when you're making a movement. So your movement is always on the out breath. And any static moments is when you're taking an in-breath. Keep working. Just a couple more. Pushing down, keeping the spine nice and long and straight. Pushing it up and then releasing into down dog. Last one. Push up and then let's release into child's pose. Well done. Taking a breath there to release before we move on to our side. So coming onto our side, you want to make sure that your elbow is underneath your shoulders and that your hips are stacked. So you might actually want to roll your hip over to make sure that your hips are aligned one on top of the other and that we're not leaning back. Take an inhale, and as we exhale, we're drawing the hips up to the sky and waving a little rainbow in the sky in this lovely sweeping, flowing movement. So the hips are coming straight up to the sky. Your legs are in this like triangle, diamond shape with your bottom leg bent and your top leg is resting on the mat with your heel in front of your bottom foot. Now a more challenging move here, if you would like, would be your side plank. So stacking your feet, straightening the legs and lifting up from here. This is much more challenging, so please just work to wherever you feel most comfortable with your legs bent or your legs straight in your side plank, wherever you feel most comfortable working on these side bends. And then we'll release that out by drawing the knees into the chest just for a second before we come on to our back. Making sure that you're drawing down to the mat through your waist, sliding your right leg along the mat and then the left leg along the mat, making sure that you're focusing on that rib to hip connection. So you're trying to draw your rib cage down towards your hips. This is an isolated movement coming from your leg, so nothing else moves. And then we're raising the arms up towards the sky, and we're going to work opposite arm and leg, drawing your arm and opposite leg out. Nice straight flowing movements, keeping everything else still and stable. So you're tucking in through your pelvic floor muscles and focusing on that rib to hip connection. This is a great a beginner exercise for abdominal strength, core strength in general. And then moving on from here, if you would like to progress, is our one leg stretch. So placing our left hand on our left ankle and your right hand on your right knee, and then we switch. So working with the breath here, you're straightening your leg out, switching from side to side, so it's opposite hand on knee, and then your outside hand goes on the outside of that foot. So your head and shoulders off the mat, looking in between your legs, really focusing on drawing your ribcage down towards your hips as we work through the abdominal muscles here. Breathing, keep breathing, looking from side to side. Your muscles should be feeling quite nice and warm now. Make sure that you're breathing. Inhale, exhale through the mouth. Keep going, just a couple more. And then we're going to release off by bringing the knees into the chest and gently rock from side to side just to release off any tension in the back. Then we'll release our abdominal muscles by having a nice full body stretch here. Just stretching out to release that off. Now we're going to work in our one leg circle. So again, making sure that we're stable and that our core, we're drawing our core down towards the mat. We lift up one leg, make sure that your knee is above your hip. And we're just drawing tiny circles in the sky with that leg, making sure that the rest of the body stays still. So just have a look down. I always find it helpful to hold my hips here and make sure that I'm not rocking my pelvis from side to side. So feel free to do that. I think it's really helpful. You can do it with your leg bent or your leg straight, whichever feels best. If you're working with your leg straight, it's a little bit more of a challenge. So if you're new to this exercise, you might just want to keep your leg bent. But imagine if your knee's bent, that you're drawing circles on the sky from your knee. And if you've got your leg straight, you're drawing circles on the sky with your toes. So breathing through that exercise, working in circles in one direction and then switching. So you want to work on about 8 circles in one direction and 8 in the other. It's an isolated movement that comes from the hip. So everything else in the body stays perfectly strong and stable. This is a really good exercise for abdominal strength and also strengthen your pelvis region, because you've got to work hard on keeping everything else stable. So we're going to work on the opposite side, making sure that your knee is above your hip. We'll start out with our leg bent, just drawing circles coming from the hip in one direction and then the other. So if you have hypermobility, this is a really good exercise, or hip issues, this is a really good exercise for creating strength in this area. Also working your abdominal muscles. You want to be feeling that sort of rooting down through your opposite leg. So you're planting everything else down into the mat and just working in that isolated movement from the hip. Drawing circles in one direction and then the other. Making sure that you breathe out through your mouth, breathing in through your nose. Just do a couple more circles here before we release that down and stretch. Do a full body stretch just to release off any tension in your hip flexors there. And then we'll come on to our other side, the other side of our side bend. So remember to stack your hips. So you've got one that your top leg is resting in front of your bottom foot. Your hips are stacked, your shoulders, you've got your elbow underneath your shoulder, and we're drawing up through the waist, making sure that we're not leaning back, tucking in through the core, tucking in through your pelvic floor muscles, exhaling through the mouth as we come up. Or if you prefer more of a challenge, you can work on your side plank, lifting up. This can actually create a little bit of discomfort on the wrist in this position, but it's okay. We need to, be okay with a bit of discomfort in the wrist. It shouldn't be painful, but we do need to work on strengthening these muscles. So you do whatever feels right for you. You can be on your forearm or on your arm, and then we'll just release that off. before coming into our swimming exercise. So knees underneath your hips and hands underneath shoulders. We're lengthening out, stretching out the back with our legs alternating each side. This is a really good exercise for spine mobility and core strength. We also need a bit of upper body strength in this position. It can get a bit challenging after a while, so you just want to make sure that everything else is staying nice and stable, and that you can feel if you're rocking from side to side. So imagine if there was a ball on your back, would it be rolling off as you rock, as you move from side to side? So we're drawing the opposite arm and opposite leg forward. Imagine there's a tug of war in between your fingers and your toes. So we're drawing opposite arm and opposite leg. In this position, we want to make sure that we're looking down, sort of towards the front of the mat, to keep our spine nice and long. In this exercise, you can often see people looking upwards. And so you want to make sure that you're looking down towards your mat to keep everything nice and strong. Now, if it feels too much to have your arms doing the movement, you're welcome to just go back and just work the legs. The exercise is really good for practicing stability through the core. So you're drawing up through your abdominal muscles and tucking in the pelvic floor muscles, breathing out as you make the extension and breathing in as you draw back in. Just trying to keep everything else nice and stable. Nice flowing movements. There's ants. I just feel like I'm going to squash them in a second because there was quite a few today. Just working through this exercise before we come back into our child's pose, just to release that off. Roll out your hands, and then we're just going to do a few cat-cow movements here. Just immobilize again through the spine and just make sure that there's no tension there. Nice and relaxed. Now we're going to thread the needle by reaching out with our right hand and drawing that hand through the left. The hips will go back as we stretch through the spine here, so lifting the left hand, placing it in between the right as we twist. This is a great exercise for shoulders as well. It feels really nice to open out the shoulder joint in this position. So lifting your right hand and threading it in between your left in this box position, and your hips will come back. So it's nice lengthening through the spine, opening out the shoulders, nice twist. Last one. And then from here, we're going to push up, and then we're going to walk into down dog, walk our feet back, which is actually a really good thing to do for your feet. Actually, is just walking back in that position. So like coming up from down dog and then walking your hands back. It's actually really good for your feet and your ankle joints. So I do encourage you to practice that as often as you can. And now we'll do our cool down. So let's stretch up. You can do a little lateral bend here from side to side if you like. And we'll do a little extension looking back, and then folding over that big beach ball, placing our hands down into the mat. We're going to bring our right leg back for a hip flex stretch. So you should feel a stretch in the front of your thighs and also in your hips. Raise your arms up if you like for a bit of an extra stretch. Just be careful not to arch your lower back here, so staying strong and stable. Breathing here, and then folding over into a brief hold in plank just for a second before we drop the knees, and then push back into child's pose. Just releasing off any tension there. We're going to come down into our tummies on the mat. Just give your spine a chance to reset there for a second before we push up into our abdominal stretch. Breathing through that nice stretch across the front of the body, and then coming back down for a second. Give your spine a chance to reset there before we tuck the toes and come up into down dog, padding the feet out, trying to create some length down the back of the legs there. And bring your right knee in between your hands, and we're going to fold down over that knee and stretch out through that right glute. So feeling that stretch on the outside of your hip and your glute off that side, just breathing there. It feels really nice, that stretch. Pushing up, back into down dog for a second, and then bringing the left knee forward in between the hands and just folding over that knee. Just breathing into that stretch. You should feel that stretch all on the outside of your hip and your glute. Sorry, that's my dog snoring in the background. Pushing up into down dog again for a second. And bringing the opposite knee forwards to stretch out to your right hamstring hip flexor. Coming up, if you would like, feeling that stretch in your hip flexor and in the front of your thigh, down your quads. And walking, bringing your foot back to meet the other foot, staying in that forward fold for a second, and then coming up really slowly, as always, coming up nice and slow, rebuilding the spine, resetting our equilibrium, rolling the shoulders at the top, bringing our head up last, and hands to prayer. Thanks for joining me today. See you again soon.